Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not usually the type to post about personal stuff like this, but I've been going back and forth on whether I should share this for a while. It's about a relationship I thought was perfect, until it wasn't. I met my wife a few years ago. We met at a mutual friend's party, and honestly, it felt like something straight out of a movie. We clicked almost instantly. I was falling for her, and I knew she was falling for me too. Things felt real from the start. You know that feeling when everything just lines up? Like the universe is telling you this is the one? Yeah, it felt like that. But here's the kicker, I didn't see the cracks forming until they were already deep. I remember those first few months. We were inseparable. We talked about everything. The future. Our dreams. Hell, we even joked about kids, and we were living in that weird little bubble of excitement. I thought we had it all figured out. But slowly, things started to change. I didn't notice it at first. I was too wrapped up in the honeymoon phase to see it. She'd be late getting home from work, then busy on weekends with friends I'd never met. Little things, you know? I brushed them off at first. Maybe I was just paranoid. Then, there was this one day, when I went to pick her up from work, and I saw her walking out of the office building, with a guy I didn't recognize. They were laughing. Talking too closely. I don't know why it bothered me so much. Maybe because I felt like I should have known who this guy was. But when I asked her about it later, she just shrugged it off, saying he was a colleague. No big deal. But that was when the doubt started creeping in. Something didn't sit right with me anymore. I hate to admit it, but I started doing something I never thought I would, checking her phone. I know, it's shady, and I'm not proud of it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I'd tell myself, it's just a gut feeling, but the more I pushed it down, the louder it got. So, one day when she left her phone on the kitchen counter, I gave in. I know. It's the classic don't check your partner's phone rule, and I broke it. But here's the thing, I didn't find what I thought I would. I wasn't expecting anything big, just a suspicious text or maybe a weird call. Instead, I found something worse, nothing. Her phone was completely empty of anything meaningful. No heartfelt messages, no I love you-s, no funny memes. Just work stuff, the occasional meme chain with her friends, and random notifications from apps I didn't even know she had. It looked sterile. Like, she'd erased everything. That should have been a red flag, right? But it wasn't at the time. Instead, I found myself thinking, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm just paranoid. But deep down, I knew something had changed. I just didn't know what it was. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in the middle of something bigger than I could control. It was like we were still going through the motions, saying the right things, doing the right things, but something was missing. And no matter how many times I tried to ask her about it, she'd always change the subject or give me some vague excuse. It started to feel like we were living in two separate worlds. I hated it. I hated the feeling of not knowing where I stood anymore, and I hated that I was starting to doubt her. But I just couldn't stop myself. It happened one night when I got home from work. I was tired, frustrated, and honestly, just wanting to kick back. But as soon as I walked through the door, I could feel it, the tension in the air. She was sitting on the couch, her phone in her hands, but she wasn't even looking at it. She was staring at the wall, lost in thought. I had no idea what was going on, but I knew something was. The weird energy between us had been building for weeks, and now it was palpable. I couldn't stand it anymore. So, I just asked. I didn't dance around it. I didn't try to soften the blow. I said, is there something going on? Between us, I mean. I feel like I'm losing you. She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something in her eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't name. Then, she let out a sigh and put the phone down, but not before I caught a glimpse of a text notification. It wasn't from me. She said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've just been busy, okay? But I could tell by the way she said it that it wasn't just the truth. It felt rehearsed. Like she was trying to convince herself more than she was trying to convince me. I pressed her. I needed answers. I've seen you pull away lately. I'm not stupid. I know you're hiding something. And that's when she broke. She didn't cry, didn't scream. But she admitted it, flat out. I've been seeing someone else. I think I went numb. My body froze, but my mind was running a million miles per hour, trying to process the words she just said. I had been so sure that I was just being paranoid, that I was imagining things, but here she was telling me that everything I feared was true. It felt like the ground was disappearing beneath me. For a second, I couldn't speak. I just stood there, trying to breathe through the shock. But when I finally found my voice, it was like a knife had been shoved into my chest. How long, was all I could manage to get out. Her eyes didn't meet mine. A few months. I wish I could say I was calm in that moment, but I wasn't. I remember the heat rising in my chest, my pulse quickening, my hands shaking. It was like a wave of anger and disbelief hit me all at once, crashing over my body and making it hard to breathe. A few months? That's how long this had been going on behind my back? My mind started to race. Was there something I missed? Had I really been that blind? The anger came first. I felt betrayed, furious. I wanted to yell, to scream, to ask why she would do this to me. But all I could do was stand there in silence, staring at her as she sat there, avoiding my gaze. I couldn't even process how she was acting so detached, like it wasn't even a big deal to her. Then came the sadness. It hit me like a freight train, and I felt so small, so worthless. The woman I had trusted with everything, the woman I thought was my partner, my equal, had been hiding this secret from me for months. It was like a gut punch that left me breathless, struggling to hold it together. I wasn't sure which emotion I felt stronger. It was like they were tangled up in each other, making it impossible to think clearly. I felt humiliated, disrespected, and completely blindsided. I never thought I'd be the guy in this situation. I never thought I'd be the one betrayed, the one left in the dark. And yet here I was, looking at the person I thought I knew better than anyone, and I couldn't even recognize her anymore. I wanted to ask all the questions. Why him? Why not me? Was I not enough? But I stopped myself. What good would it do to keep asking those things? I knew I wasn't going to get answers that would make it better. She finally spoke, but her voice was barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I don't know what I expected to feel in that moment, but what I got wasn't relief. It wasn't closure. It was just emptiness. I didn't know what to do with myself. My head was spinning, my heart felt like it had been ripped out and stomped on. I thought I could handle this kind of thing. I thought I could keep it together. But standing there, hearing those words, feeling like everything I thought was real was just shattered. I couldn't even think straight. I don't remember much of what happened after that. I know I told her to leave, but she didn't. She stayed on the couch, staring blankly at the floor, and I just walked out. I went for a walk, trying to clear my head, but I couldn't escape the questions. The what-ifs. The how the hell did I get here? It was like every little thing from the past few months was coming back to me in a rush, and now it all made sense in the worst way possible. I was angry with her, yes, but I was equally angry at myself. How could I have been so blind? How did I not see the signs? The late nights at work, the out-of-town weekends with friends I never met, the secret of phone calls. It was all there, right in front of me. But I kept telling myself, nah, I'm just being paranoid. She loves me. She wouldn't do that. I don't know how long I was gone, but when I came back, she was still sitting there. The silence between us was suffocating. I didn't know what to say, and frankly, I didn't think I could say anything without losing it completely. So, I did the only thing that felt natural. I packed my stuff. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there. Not with her. Not with everything that had just happened. I didn't expect her to try to stop me. I didn't expect any big dramatic scene. She just let me leave. And I think that hurt more than anything else. It wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the fact that she didn't even seem to care enough to fight for us. I left. I walked out of the apartment with just a duffel bag and my thoughts. Honestly, I didn't know where to go or what to do. It was late, and the city felt strangely quiet, like it was holding its breath along with me. I ended up at a friend's place, crashing on his couch. He knew something was off, but I didn't want to talk about it just yet. I needed time to process everything. The next few days were a blur. I stayed with friends, went to work, but I wasn't really there. I don't think I was really anywhere. My mind was stuck on one question: how could she do this? I couldn't wrap my head around it. We had built a life together. Plans. Dreams. And now it felt like none of that mattered. I kept thinking about the apartment, the place we had shared. I kept seeing her there in my mind, in every room, in every corner. It was like there was a ghost of her in every space, but it wasn't the same. It was emptier now. The laughter, the late-night conversations, the quiet moments together, all of it had been replaced by an awful silence. A silence that was suffocating. I started going through our photos. Big mistake. Looking at pictures of us on vacations, celebrating holidays, laughing at stupid jokes, it hit me hard. It was like looking at a life that no longer existed. I wanted to tear those photos up. Burn them. But I couldn't. They were all I had left of the good parts, the parts that made me believe in what we had. But then the anger came again. Anger at her, anger at myself for being so stupid, so naive. I didn't want to feel sorry for myself, but I couldn't help it. Every time I thought I was getting better, something would remind me of her, of what I lost, and the hurt would come rushing back. It was a struggle to figure out what I should do next. Do I go back? Do I confront her again? Do I even want to know the whole truth? But one thing was clear: I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. I had to make a decision. A week passed, but it felt like a lifetime. I'd been avoiding her calls, ignoring her texts. I couldn't bring myself to talk to her, not yet. Every time I thought about the situation, my chest tightened. I felt this crushing weight on my shoulders, like there was no way to escape the aftermath of everything that had happened. I kept telling myself I needed to be strong, that I couldn't keep letting her control my emotions like this. But the truth was, I was so conflicted. Part of me wanted to just forget about her, to walk away and never look back. I had the freedom to start fresh. I could move on. But the other part of me, the part that loved her, the part that wanted to believe there was still something worth saving, kept pulling me back. Maybe I was being weak, or maybe I was holding on to a version of her that didn't exist anymore. I didn't want to be the guy who just lets everything slip away. I didn't want to be the guy who gives up on a marriage just because things got tough. But was this even about tough anymore? Was this just something that couldn't be fixed? One night, I decided to call her. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I knew I needed to hear her side of things. I needed to know if there was any explanation, any hope that we could fix this. She picked up after 2 rings, and I could hear the hesitation in her voice when she said my name. It wasn't the warmth I remembered. It was just empty. I started with something simple, almost too casual. We need to talk. There was a long pause on the other end. I know. I've been waiting for you to call. I miss you. Hearing her say that almost broke me. Miss me? After everything? But I stayed calm, kept my voice steady. I don't know if that means anything anymore. I don't know if I can go back to how things were. She said, I don't expect things to go back to normal, not like before. I'm sorry for what I did. I know I hurt you, and I don't know how to fix it. But I want to try. I want to make it right. I didn't know if I believed her, but hearing those words, those simple, honest words, made me wonder if maybe there was still a chance for us. Or maybe I was just fooling myself. I wasn't sure if I was ready to dive back into the mess. I mean, could you really forgive someone for something like that? I kept going back and forth in my head, weighing my options. The truth was, I loved her. Even after everything, I still loved her. But I didn't know if love was enough to rebuild everything that had been broken. We set up a meeting for the next day. I didn't want to, but part of me felt like I had to. For closure, for answers, for whatever. I knew I was on the edge of making a decision that could change everything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to this story. I needed to hear it from her, even if it meant hearing things I didn't want to hear. When I walked into the cafe where we were meeting, I almost didn't recognize her. She was sitting at a table by the window, and for the first time in days, I saw her clearly. She didn't look like the woman I thought I knew. She looked small. She wasn't the confident, independent woman I'd fallen for. She was the version of herself who had made a mistake, a person who was afraid of facing the consequences. She stood up as soon as she saw me, and for a second, I thought she was going to rush over and hug me. But she didn't. She just stood there, waiting. "Hey," I said, my voice coming out quieter than I expected. "Hey," she replied. Her eyes were swollen, like she'd been crying for days. Maybe she had been. We sat down, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. It was like we were both waiting for the other to break the silence. Finally, she did. "I've been thinking about everything," she said, her voice shaky. "And I know I messed up. I don't even know why I did it. I got caught up in something that was so wrong, and I didn't know how to get out of it. But I swear to you, I never meant to hurt you. You don't deserve this. I didn't want to destroy everything we built." She was apologizing again. But it felt different this time. It wasn't just words. There was a sincerity in her voice that made me pause. Could I believe her? Could I let myself believe that this wasn't the end? I didn't know. I still didn't know what I wanted. But for some reason, I couldn't walk away from this conversation just yet. Something in me wanted to hear her out, to understand. Even if it meant facing more pain. I let her talk. She poured out her emotions, her regrets, and her reasons. It wasn't easy to hear, but somehow, I couldn't stop listening. Maybe it was because a part of me still wanted to understand what had happened. Maybe it was because I was still trying to hold on to that image of her, the one I had before everything fell apart. She told me about how she felt distant from me for months before the affair happened. How she'd felt lonely even when I was around. How she'd been caught up in the excitement of a new connection with someone who made her feel seen. I hated hearing it, but I couldn't deny that there were pieces of truth in her words. We had been struggling for a while, even if I hadn't realized it at the time. "I wasn't looking for this," she said, her eyes welling up. "I never wanted to hurt you. But I kept making excuses for why it was okay. I kept telling myself I wasn't doing anything wrong, but deep down, I knew I was." The anger came flooding back, this time sharper, deeper. But I didn't let it show. I couldn't. I needed to hear it all before I made any decisions. "I didn't know how to stop," she continued. "I thought maybe if I just kept going, I'd be able to fix myself, find some way to feel whole again. But I was wrong. I destroyed everything. I destroyed us." The silence that followed was heavy. She was crying now, and I could see how much pain she was in. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would be okay, but I couldn't. It wasn't okay. None of it was. She had betrayed me in a way I wasn't sure I could come back from. But here she was, admitting everything. Taking full responsibility for what she had done. And I could see the regret in her eyes, the real, raw regret. "I love you," she whispered. "And I know I've lost you. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I'm asking for a chance. A chance to prove that I can change, that I can be the person you deserve. If you can find it in your heart to give me that chance." I didn't know what to say. My mind was still reeling from everything I had just heard. Could I forgive her? Could I trust her again? And even if I could, was it worth it? Could we ever be the same? I didn't answer right away. How could I? Everything inside me was screaming to just walk away, to close the chapter and never look back. But something kept me rooted to the spot, staring at her like I was trying to find the truth in her eyes, the answers I so desperately needed. The truth was, I was torn. There was a part of me that wanted to believe her, that wanted to hear her out and see if we could rebuild what we had. But there was another part, the more rational part, that was telling me this was it. Once trust was broken like this, how could it ever be repaired? How could I ever look at her without wondering if she was hiding something else? Could we ever go back to what we were? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I couldn't keep letting myself get swept up in her apologies, no matter how sincere they seemed. She had hurt me. She had betrayed me in a way I couldn't even comprehend. And I had to decide if I was willing to risk it all again. I don't know what to say, I finally told her. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can forgive you. Her face crumpled slightly, and she reached across the table, as if trying to close the distance between us. But I pulled back, not out of anger, but out of fear. If I let her in again, would I be making the biggest mistake of my life? I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, she said quietly. I want to show you that I can change. I want to prove to you that I'm worth giving a second chance. Please, don't give up on us. I stared at her, my heart in my throat. I had to admit, hearing her say those words hit me in ways I didn't expect. But it wasn't just about words. It was about trust. It was about whether or not I could see a future with her again. And deep down, I wasn't sure I could. I can't make any promises, I said slowly. I don't know what the future holds. But right now, I need space. I need time to think. She nodded, her face falling in disappointment, but there was no anger in her eyes. Just sadness. And maybe that was the hardest part, seeing her so broken, knowing I was the one who had to make the call, knowing that no matter what I chose, someone was going to get hurt. After that conversation, I did what I needed to do, I took space. A lot of it. I didn't know what else to do, honestly. I couldn't make any decisions while I was still emotionally raw and confused. Every time I thought about the situation, I felt like I was being pulled in a million directions. I spent the next couple of weeks focusing on myself. I started running more, something I hadn't done in ages, trying to clear my mind. It helped to have the physical release, even if it only lasted for a few hours. I didn't feel like talking to anyone about it, but I didn't exactly want to be alone either. So, I kept my routine: work, exercise, then back to my place where I'd crash into bed, too exhausted to think about anything else. But no matter how hard I tried to distract myself, the thoughts kept coming back. Her face. The tears. The apologies. The I love yous. I kept hearing her voice in my head, asking for a second chance, begging me not to give up on us. And honestly, part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to give her the chance because, God, the thought of losing everything we had, it made my chest ache. But then I'd remember the betrayal, the lies, the secrecy, the broken trust, and my heart would harden again. I couldn't just erase all of that. I couldn't just pretend like nothing happened. And that was the issue, I was stuck. I didn't know what the right decision was. Should I let go of the past and try to rebuild, or should I walk away and protect myself from further hurt? The days passed, and the distance between us grew. I didn't reach out to her. She didn't reach out to me, respecting the space I'd asked for. But it felt wrong, like there was this unbearable weight between us. The silence spoke louder than any words could. It got to the point where I couldn't avoid it any longer. I needed to make a choice. I needed to know what kind of future I wanted. And if that future had her in it, I needed to understand if I could trust her again. I woke up one morning, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of clarity. The confusion, the anger, the sadness, it was still there, but it was quieter. I knew I couldn't keep living like this, stuck in the middle, unsure of what to do. I needed to make a decision. I called her. It was the first time in weeks I'd actually reached out. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I knew I had to face her. I couldn't keep running from this. It was time to deal with it, one way or another. "Hey," she answered, her voice sounding both hopeful and tentative. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. "We need to talk." There was a long pause on the other end, and I could almost hear her heart racing through the phone. I wasn't sure if she was relieved or terrified, but either way, I could feel the weight of the moment. We agreed to meet at the same cafe where we'd talked before. As I walked there, my mind was running through everything we'd been through. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, and now, the possibility of forgiveness. Could I really give her a second chance? Was I ready to trust her again? When I arrived, she was already sitting at the table, waiting. She didn't look up when I came in. She was just staring down at her hands. I couldn't tell if she was nervous or preparing for the worst. Maybe both. I sat down across from her, and for a few moments, neither of us said anything. The silence felt like an eternity, but it was different this time. It wasn't the uncomfortable silence of anger or resentment. It was the silence of two people who didn't know where to start, but who both knew they couldn't avoid the conversation any longer. Finally, I broke it. "I've been thinking a lot," I said. "About everything. And I realized something. I'm not ready to walk away yet. I still care about you. But that doesn't mean everything's just going to go back to normal. I need time. I need space to figure out if I can trust you again. If you can prove to me that I'm not making a huge mistake by giving you that chance." She looked up at me, her eyes wide, like she was afraid to believe what I was saying. She didn't interrupt, just nodded slowly, taking in what I said. "I understand," she said quietly. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'm willing to fight for us, for you, for the trust we lost. But I won't rush you. I just want the chance to show you I can be the person you need me to be." That was the hardest part. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but I also knew that this wasn't something that could be fixed with a few words. Trust didn't just come back like that. It would take time, effort, and a hell of a lot of healing. But maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk. In the weeks that followed, I tried to take things slowly. Every day felt like a test. Could I really move forward with her? Could I rebuild trust after everything? The answer wasn't clear, and I didn't expect it to be. This wasn't something that could be fixed in a day, a week, or even a month. It was going to take time and patience. We started talking more. Not just about the affair, but about everything that had led up to it. The gaps in our relationship that neither of us had acknowledged before. The things we'd been avoiding, hoping they'd resolve on their own. The things we hadn't said out loud because we were afraid to face them. It was painful. There were moments when I wanted to walk away, when the anger and hurt were so overwhelming that I couldn't bear it. But there were also moments where I could see the effort she was putting in. She wasn't just saying the right things, she was showing me. Slowly, but surely, she was demonstrating that she was willing to do whatever it took to earn back my trust. There were small steps, too. Little gestures that showed she was committed to changing, checking in with me more often, asking how I was feeling, being honest about her own struggles. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. One evening, we sat down and talked for hours. We laughed about old memories, argued about things we'd never talked about, and, for the first time in a long while, I felt like we were really communicating. Not just surface-level small talk, but real, raw conversation. She told me about her fears, about how she regretted what had happened, how she felt like she was losing herself before everything blew up. "I didn't know who I was anymore," she admitted. "I was so focused on making things look perfect that I lost sight of what was real. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for not being who you needed me to be." And I believed her. At least, I believed that she was trying. But trust wasn't something you just give back in one conversation. Trust was built over time, through actions, not words. So I kept moving cautiously. I needed to see her keep showing up, day after day. I needed to see consistency, and I needed to make sure I was being true to myself in the process. The emotional scars from what happened were still there, but they didn't feel as raw. I wasn't ready to say everything was healed, but it felt like we were heading in the right direction. We were making progress, even if it was slow. As time passed, I started to notice the small changes in myself too. I wasn't as bitter when I thought about the past anymore. It wasn't that I had forgiven everything, but I could see how much she was trying. And I started trying, too. I had to. If I was going to keep moving forward, I needed to give myself permission to let go of the anger and resentment. But letting go was harder than I expected. Every time I looked at her, I still saw the betrayal. Every time she was a little late responding to a text or seemed distracted, my mind would race to the worst possible scenarios. I couldn't help it. The fear was still there. The fear that maybe one day she would slip again, that this second chance was just another trap. Then one evening, she went out with friends. It wasn't unusual. She had always had a strong social circle, and I'd never been the type to tell her she couldn't spend time with people outside our relationship. But this time, the knot in my stomach wouldn't loosen. I kept checking my phone, even though I knew I shouldn't. I knew I had to trust her, but every minute that ticked by felt like an eternity. And then, it happened. I saw a text on her phone. It was a message from a guy I didn't recognize, something casual about meeting up for drinks. It wasn't the content of the message that hit me, but the sudden surge of panic that rushed over me. I couldn't breathe. I told myself to calm down, that I was overreacting. But it felt like I was back at square one. When she came home, I barely said anything. But she could tell something was off. She asked if I was okay, and before I could stop myself, I asked her about the message. Her face went pale. She wasn't expecting me to confront her about it. I watched her fumble for words, and in that moment, I could see the vulnerability, the guilt. "I swear it's nothing," she said quickly. "It was just a friend from work. We were talking about a project. I should have told you about it, but it's not what you think." I was still silent, waiting for more, but she just kept looking at me, hoping I would believe her. I wanted to. I really did. But the doubt was there. The old wound had opened again, and it hurt worse than before. For a few moments, the room felt suffocating. I didn't know what to say or what to do. I wanted to scream, to demand more answers, to lash out. But instead, I just stood there, staring at her, trying to process what was real and what was paranoia. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," I finally said. "I don't know if I can keep living in fear of what's happening when I'm not around." She looked like she was about to break. "Please don't give up on me. On us." And I didn't know what to say. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment, maybe the last moment, when I had to decide if I was ready to trust her again or if I was walking away for good. It felt like the world had gone silent as I stood there, staring at her, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of losing everything, and I could feel my own heart aching for her. But I also felt the walls inside me growing taller, the doubt creeping in like a shadow I couldn't shake. We sat down together, the space between us still heavy, but I knew I couldn't keep avoiding the conversation. I had to make a choice. And as painful as it was, I couldn't keep running from it. "I need you to understand something," I said quietly. "I don't want to keep living in fear. I don't want to question everything you do. But I also can't pretend like nothing happened. What you did hurt me in a way I can't describe. And I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again. Not right away, not after everything." She nodded slowly, her face a mixture of regret and understanding. She didn't try to interrupt. She just listened. "I've been thinking about what you said," I continued. "About wanting to prove to me that you can change. And I want to believe that. I really do. But the truth is, I'm not sure if I can get past this. I'm not sure if I can let go of the fear that you'll betray me again." The silence stretched between us, longer than before. She didn't cry this time. Instead, she just sat there, her hands clenched in her lap, waiting for me to decide. "I don't know if this is the end for us," I said finally. "I don't know if we can make it through this. But what I do know is that I need to take care of myself first. I need to heal. And I can't do that if I'm still holding on to all this doubt. She looked up at me, her eyes wet but steady. If you need time, I'll give it to you. I'll wait. But I'm not going to give up on us. I could see the sincerity in her face. I could feel it in her voice. But it didn't make the decision any easier. I realized then that sometimes, love isn't about immediate answers. It's about giving yourself the space to understand what you really need and then making the choice that's best for you. And I knew, deep down, that my journey wasn't about whether or not we could fix this. It was about whether I could forgive myself for even thinking it was worth trying. I couldn't keep living in the past, but I also couldn't ignore what I needed to move forward. I need to let go of the past, I said finally, my voice shaky. I need to focus on what's in front of me. And right now, that might be without you. I don't know. I need time. And with that, I stood up, feeling like I had just made the hardest decision of my life. The door was still open, there was a possibility, a small hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. But it wasn't something I could decide in that moment. I walked out of that cafe knowing that the future was uncertain. But one thing was clear, I couldn't stay in limbo forever. I needed to heal. I needed to choose myself. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was finally taking control of my own path, no matter where it led.